You are watching the Deadfoot Diver Podcast with Kurt, the Deadfoot Diver.
Welcome to the Deadfoot Diver. My name's Kurt. I'm the Deadfoot Diver, and I am pleased to have on my show today an amazing person in the diving world who has been involved with the RCMP diving. He's world famous for his tech and cave diving. He is also a National Geographic explorer. So I'm thrilled to have on today Bill Nadeau. How's it going, Bill?
Thanks. Great, Curtis. I appreciate being here. I should clarify, not National Geographic. I am a part of the Royal Canadian Geographic Society College of Fellows
That's
and
it.
done some stuff with them for sure. But yeah, I just want to make sure I don't want to get the people at National Geographic all excited. Think I'm carrying their flag.
Yeah, true. I sort of consider them sort of similar, so I get them mixed up sometimes.
They are partners in the industry without a doubt.
Yeah, so anyhow, thank you very much for joining us. So tell me, first of all, how did you get into the world of diving?
I think, being raised by a father who, had a passion for the water himself, and he was a diver. Not really extreme or active diver, but he was a diver and he loved being around the ocean and well, the lakes anyway. And he always had me in the water. I mean, I was swimming before I was walking, and I think it was something that came naturally. And so, before I'd even graduated from high school, I was doing commercial diving operations. Um, and then I think the real spark for working in the industry came even before I went to university. I did a 1 year tenure in Australia working on a liveaboard, Mike Ball water sport. And it was really one of the very first big liveaboard operations in the world that were kind of doing things outside of a 50-mile journey from the coastline. We were going into the outer part of the barrier reefs and like one of the original catamarans. So that was where I got my real first spark for the passion. And then when I came back from that, and then went into university, I was still kind of doing my commercial stuff on the side, and even running my own charter business in Bala, Ontario, believe it or not, of all places.
Uh,
Um, the university, the degree program that I was involved in was environmental studies and coastal geomorphology, and I had a connection with some of the folks in the aquacultural and marine biology program, and they had a fish collection program. So they would go to the East Coast, and they really needed ways to um, drive and develop their abilities to collect fish, go in the water, research the fish, research the marine environment, do successful collections with low mortality rates, and bring those back. And of course, I wasn't a biologist by any means, but I understood the technical systems around that in technical diving. I had passion for caving. We're doing some exploring on in Ontario, and even with my degree, we were even going into some of the quarries to do environmental assessments. So we're kind of going into some of these flooded mine shafts. So a lot of those practical and technical applications just naturally migrated over into sort of the scientific application, and of course, a lot of the commercial diving that I was doing as well. So that's kind of where it all started.
wow, that's awesome. So what was it like living on a liveaboard for a year?
It was great, and Australia was really good, and the people were phenomenal. Back then, Mike Ball, he had just one shop at the time and the one boat. I mean, of course, his operation is quite large now, and from what I understand, he's actually retired from the business. But he's expanded into two or three vessels. But the people were fantastic. They took care of me. I was young. I was kind of stupid. Probably didn't know what I was doing. All I wanted to do was dive. Yeah, and they really couldn't pay me much because I didn't actually have a working visa. So I kind of got paid, a little bit under the table, but mostly it was, room and board and expenses, and it kind of paid for my own diving development. So that was really good. But yeah, to be out there on the water, 150, 200 miles away from the coastline, the stars, fantastic diving. We're going back more than 4 decades now. So, the environment was pristine. A lot of
Oh,
it was still discovered. So it was fantastic.
yeah, that's amazing. And that's cool that you did that volunteer basis to basically be able to go and do that. When I worked for Mel Fisher back in 92, I did the same thing because I couldn't get an American work visa and I didn't care. I wanted to go dive for treasure. And I actually have Sid Jones coming on, my former captain, and he actually took me on. I got to work in the lab there and then got to do some treasure diving with Kane and stuff. So
Yeah, it's a great point, and I think with and I don't want to generalize or anything, but with today's generation, a lot of people understand that who are getting into the diving business need to, they need to forfeit the fact that they're going to have to put in an internship. It was funny. A few months back, I was in a discussion with a number of instructors who were saying that it's very difficult for dive shops to pay for instructors to work in their dive shop. They're getting paid nothing, and so if you get paid nothing, you're going to provide nothing quality. And I had a problem with that because yeah, I had to put, like yourself, you had to put in your time. You had to volunteer. You had to get the experience. You had to learn. I mean, you can get the
Yep.
instructor certification, but until you get the time and spend, especially in adaptive instruction, until you get the time to work with a lot of students, you're no different. There's nothing to set you aside from anybody else. And so that internship is really important. Um, and I think what people just need to do is maybe step back a little bit and think about many of the other industries that same thing happen. I mean, if you become a doctor, think about the hundreds of thousands of dollars you spend to go through med school and undergrad school and all those things, and you still do an internship.
Yep.
So, but I do. I mean, for those who say I'm discouraged by that fact, I want to make money right away. I say the experiences you get volunteering for maybe a dive shop or resort down south, um, you know, pay itself back in accolades. And I think that especially when if you marry that with the drive, and I've always had the drive to do things differently. I've had a very profitable and successful diving career over the years, so it does pay off in the end. It's a good investment.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. And I mean, I see a lot of guys I know that go and as soon as they get their open wire, they go and they want to get their dive master right away, and then they expect that they're gonna like just instantly make lots of money and stuff like that. And that's not the reality of it. But I mean, when you get chances to do stuff like this, it is well worth the trade-off. I mean, I wouldn't trade anything for the year I spent diving for Mel Fisher. I mean, I have more experiences than I can ever imagine. I've handled more Spanish treasure than I could ever have imagined to. It's even working in the lab every single day. There was not a single boring day I had when I lived in Key West. If you live in Key West and have a boring day, then there's something wrong with you.
That's right. You're not looking hard enough for the opportunities, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, have you done a lot of diving with adaptive students for tech diving?
A little bit for tech diving, a lot of it in the recreational or scientific field, or they're not really commercial, but people who are they're trying to find a switch in their job. They're because of whatever disability they inherited, either genetically or through an accident, a workplace accident. They looking at a workplace training program, and they wanted a different career. And what I loved about these individuals were there are people that said, because it's one of my philosophies is when somebody tells me I can't do something, when somebody's know
Yeah.
it's not for you or it's above or beyond your abilities, well, that just makes me want it harder and work harder for it.
Yep.
So, those individuals that came forward and said, I'm looking for a new career. My previous career, I can't do it because of this injury I've suffered, but I believe I can do this. And as soon as they say that word, I believe I can do it, I'm 100% in to, trying to facilitate that. So not a lot of experience, with training adaptive. I'm not a recognized or certified adaptive skill instructor, but I mean a lot of the training and coaching I do is not by certification or I don't. I would say almost 50% of the clientele that I come in to me are there for one-on-one personalized development,
Yep.
and so they're not seeking a C card. They're seeking how can I become a better commercial diver? How can I become a better instructor or technical diver? How can I just be a better person in the water and more aware of what I'm doing around? And so, of course, those who need those adaptive skills um, naturally fit into that. And so, what we do is we say, okay, where are you? Where do you want to be? And what do we need to do to get there between those two? What are the challenges and how do we overcome them? We don't say that it can't be done. We just say we just need to work at it till it can be done.
Yeah, which is awesome. I mean, diving has made such an impact on my life personally, again, that it's like I can't believe where it's gone in a matter of a year. And then doing this podcast is now taking it to a whole nother level beyond my imagination, and I've just launched it. So
Well, and I love. I mean, I love the concept. I love the fact. I mean, I almost feel that people who, even those without disabilities should look at taking an adaptive program, the philosophies and the approaches behind it, because that's exactly what diving is all about. We all have some form of handicap in the water because we're going into a foreign environment, and there's a lot of things we just don't know about it. It's funny that I don't want to go off on a tangent here, but when we talk about technical diving, and of course, we had the conversation the other night with Michael Manduna, who coined the term technical diving. One of the things I didn't get a chance to ask him, but was that I personally have not a problem with the word technical diver, but I want to caution people when we separate the technical divers from the recreational divers, because all diving is technical.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you're working for a living, getting paid to do what you're doing outside of instructors, diving, recreational diving instructors, you're doing it voluntarily. It's a recreational activity. And right from the very beginning, when you first took your open water course and you learned about life support systems and high pressure systems that were regulated from first and second stages, and the physiology of the implications of what the pressure of water causes, those are technical concepts. And as we advance or extend our abilities or our ranges into the ocean or the lake or the cave for that matter, those technical applications get more complex. And so adaptive just takes that exact approach and says, okay, we just have one more kind of complication, one more technical aspect that we have to employ to overcome the challenges so that we succeed in our operation. And so I think that's really important. If more divers, I think, understood that and were able to step back and say, first of all, it would be a very humbling thing for a lot of people. We know a lot of divers die, and one of the causes of diving accidents is people just don't understand what their limitations are, and quite what their abilities are and what they have to do to improve them. How do we step back and overcome that? Well, part of it is recognizing what your limitations are and not label them or stigmatize them. Because I see a lot of couples, especially when I do cave training. It's very interesting. I have couples come in, and usually one of the couples want to do a cave course, and the other doesn't. They're very afraid of the cave, right? Yeah. Yeah. And by the end of it, it's funny. Usually, the one that signed up for the cave course does not perform as well as the person who came in. I usually say, hey, to the other couple, the other person in the relationship, I say, hey, you just come in and take a cavern course. Just come and explore what some of that cavern zone's all like. Well, it unlocks a lot of the myths and the fears that they have about cave diving. And the next thing you know, they're in the cave with us. But because they began with a level of humility, they had a desire to explore and learn, but it was shadowed by some of their fears, and in a way they underestimated what their abilities were. Where in case their spouse, not all cases, but in many cases, overestimated what their abilities were. They just wanted to go, go, go. I'm a cave diver. I've got my twins. I've got my regulators. I'm diving in wrecks. And I'm like, oh, time out. Diving in a wreck is much different than diving in a cave. So yeah, I think the adaptive philosophies that we can approach to a lot of this stuff has incredible parallels.
I never even thought about it that way. Yeah, that's a really awesome way to look at it, actually. I mean, when I was starting to do this whole thing, I had a lot of adapting to do just to get gear set up properly and figure stuff out. I'm actually going to do side mount training with Hubert Kretchen in May, which I'm super excited about. And because I never thought I would ever get a chance to dive with somebody with my disabilities, especially with my leg and being blind in my left eye, that I would ever do cave diving or cavern or wreck penetration. So I may not do the wreck penetration, but I sure as heck am definitely, I want to try doing the cave diving in the cavern for sure. I mean, he's got a lady there who's doing cave diving that's a paraplegic. So I ain't got no excuse.
Well, and I think the physical disability is one thing, and I know that something prior to coming to the podcast, you and I were talking about there's the mental or psychological, that's another sort of realm of disabilities, but the physical disability can be, or limitations are very different than what we have going on in our head. And sometimes a lot of that, and sometimes it's good, it's protective, right? It's self-preservation. These are the sort of the signals and subconscious that say, hey, before you go in and do that, maybe you need to do A, B, and C first and get yourself trained. And an example of this, I get, one of the few people that I had the fortune of training that were disabled. This individual had lost an arm in a mill accident. It was going back quite a long time ago. And this individual really wanted to go into caves and wrecks. Um, and so, he was prepared to do just about anything it took to get there. And each time we looked at another stage. And so we got to now to a lot of the line work. And it is now actually sort of into the full cave part of what we were doing. And and he's saying, and part of that skill is we learn how to, either lost line drills or, running gaps or jumps in a cave. You need to be able to deploy a reel and run it from one line to another line or to a main line, or, simulate a broken line and how we're going to repair these lines. And he's like, I can't tie lines. I can't use my mouth as a second hand because obviously I've got a regulator in. And so I don't think I can, he says, I think this is the wall that I'm going to hit. And he says, is there a way that I can cave dive with somebody that if I get into that situation, they can, they can help, take care of that for me. And I'm going, no. If you want that car, if you want that accomplishment, it's all about self-sufficiency, self-reliance, and self-rescue.
Yep.
I mean, nobody wakes up in the morning thinking, well, if I'm going to get lost in a cave, I'll get lost with somebody else. It's something else happens. So we figured it out. And, a lot of it was just, sitting around, a Tim Hortons coffee bench and brainstorming and say, okay, why don't we created a reel that had some flotation around it. So the reel itself was neutrally buoyant in the water. And as we got deeper, of course, the mechanism that we used to maintain its neutral buoyancy started to compress. And so we thought, okay, how do we add it? Because he needed to be able to hold the reel up, let it go, while he used with his other, with his one hand, do a tie off or run a loop, and then come be able to grab the reel and not have it drop into the mud or get tangled into into the the existing line, or even float up and out of the way. So it was interesting how we, it's all about saying I can overcome this. We just got to think about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the one really good thing about diving is, I mean, it's an ultimate equalizer for disabilities once you're in the water. It's, I'm absolutely a klutz on land, and especially trying to get in, especially at the tugs in Tobin, where what the steps are like there.
Yep.
So which one of the other reasons I want to do side mounts, so I don't have to wear a tank on my back going in there, because usually I get about like 5 steps. I usually trip, end up going down, and then just pull myself out to where it's deeper.
Yeah. Well, we learn by trial and error, and well, by fire. Right?
Yep. No, exactly. I mean, and I found too, though, the one other thing that's really motivated me to push on this podcast is watching all these guys, like especially all the guys on diveheart.org, and I've talked to a couple of their divers and stuff like that are like full paraplegics, quadriplegics. I interviewed this guy Chris Block the other day. He's quadriplegic, and I mean, there's video of him actually walking on the bottom. So it's incredible. I mean, and not only that, the benefits that I get personally from pain are incredible. I noticed a huge difference in pain, my pain level after diving this summer. And it would last for a couple of days usually. So
well, if you think about it, the environment is hyperbaric, right? I mean, people say, hey, in any kind of rehab, I've had a number of joint injuries over the years, playing a lot of physical sports and having physical work activities. And the one thing that all my physiotherapists and surgeons have said is go swimming, get in the pool, do a lot of swimming. Well, what is diving, right? It's the same thing, and you're using, I think, more muscles than you would normally, just being on the surface. And then, of course, the other thing we know that for a lot of ailments, hyperbaric treatment is of course a great thing, right? And imposing partial pressures of oxygen, increased partial pressures of oxygen, do help heal tissues. I'm not a doctor by any means. I'm not trying to profess that, but I know there's a lot of evidence out there that supports that hyperbaric treatments are good. So you combine those two. Well, why not, right? And if you're healing the body, you're healing the mind.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. And, it's unfortunate that a lot of doctors totally disregard any type of hyperbaric treatment for pain relief and stuff. I mean, I know my grandmother, for instance, when she was alive, she had a really bad infection in her leg. She ended up losing her leg. And I kept telling my parents and stuff, I said, talk to the doctor and get her into a hyperbaric chamber and see if they can reverse the gangrene before it gets too bad. And the doctor just totally discounted it. Nope, nothing to do with it whatsoever. And I mean, that's the other issue we have here in Canada, as you know, is the lack of diving physicians. I mean, poor Dr. Harper up in Tobermory still can't retire because he's got nobody to replace him.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, it's almost chronic throughout the medical industry, right? We need more people for sure.
Especially in Canada. I mean, if you get I was like stunned last year when I found out that since they closed the clinic in Tobermory, that if you have a diving accident, they got to take you 40 minutes to Wyerton, evaluate you there, and then 40 minutes back to the chamber while Dr. Harper's sitting and waiting and watching the ambulance go to Wyerton.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. A lot of the bureaucracies behind it, and one of the issues, and we're kind of fighting it out here in British Columbia, is that hyperbaric medicine is not recognized as well as it should be, and so a lot of um, insurance coverages and medical coverages don't recognize it. I mean, it's funny. There's a lot of other, and I'm not for a minute minimizing their effectiveness or legitimacy, but there's a lot of other holistic forms of treatment that are recognized, and yet a proven science, proven physical science of hyperbaric medicine is not there. And so if it's not there and it's not going to be paid for, because let's be honest, the majority of our country relies on a very good healthcare system, and we have, say what you will about it. I mean, there are flaws and holes in it. It's one of the best healthcare systems in the world. Um, it doesn't cover hyperbaric medicine, and so if there's not an opportunity to do it, nobody's going to build those facilities. And we need one on the island here, and we don't have one. I'm talking about Vancouver Island, of course.
So you don't even have a chamber on the island at all.
No, no. I mean, we have one down at Esquimalt, the military naval base, but it is reserved specifically for non-civilians. So, um, and unless it's a really unique situation, because they're not covered, of course, right? They're not
Yeah.
covered under the same medical system. They're not covered under the same kind of liability or negligence coverages. So they don't. I mean, they really won't. I'm not aware of. I'm only aware of one incident in the last 20 years that they've taken a non DND person into their chamber. Now there could be more, but I know that they got to fly them over to Vancouver.
Wow, that's crazy. That's
Yeah.
and again, time and everything else, delays in a diving accident are not good.
No, no, time is of essence in those kind of situations for sure. Now, I believe that things are going to change. People are becoming more aware of it. They're becoming more educated about hyperbaric medicine, and certainly diving is becoming way more popular. And then hyperbaric medicine for non-diving ailments is certainly becoming more recognized too. So I think it's just a matter of time.
So you do a lot of training. You even train in rebreathers, trimix, and stuff like that, correct?
That's right. Yeah.
So what is your opinion of how I mean when I started diving back in 1992, I mean even nitrox was considered voodoo gas and like,
Yeah.
oh, don't touch that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what is your opinion with how all of a sudden the explosion of and the merging of rebreathers and stuff like that all into the recreational market where they're like trying to push them through?
Um, so we've had a number of sort of evolutions of rebreathers becoming popular in the market. I mean, I think the first one is almost well, it is 30 years ago, 90, the early to mid 90s. We had Draeger come out with the Ray and the Dolphin, and well, first it was the Atlantis, Draeger Atlantis, and those were sort of the first. It wasn't the first, but it was one of the first more mainstream uh, units that were available to the recreational market. It was easy to use. It was very reliable. They had a couple of hiccups in the beginning with the constant flow orifices, but for the most part, the units were very effective, very reliable, and extremely affordable, comparably. And we saw like this sort of jump. Everybody's like, "Hey, what is this stuff? And what is it all about?" Still had a lot of limitations, but it sort of opened our eyes. And then we had a number of other rebreather and they weren't people that were specifically dedicated to building rebreathers, but they were involved in the diving industry, breathing life support systems. AP Diving being one. I mean, AP Diving was really the first company that opened up the market on a large scale to say, hey, here is something that from a technical perspective, technological perspective, that is relatively easy to use, is extremely reliable, and most important, well, not most importantly, but most importantly from a marketing and demand perspective, is it's affordable. And it was modular, so it was easy to repair and easy to send in. It was a Europe-based rebreather, so it kind of exploded, and because they could mass produce on a larger number, they kept the prices down. And that I think was important because even though, you know, and and I don't want to get into a debate about what rebreathers are better than others. I think they've all got their unique specialness about it. But what APD diving did is it inspired other people to start to build their own or design their own and create very good models. And outside of some of the bigger industries like Hollis or Prism, the Prism units, we saw people like Leon Scammahorn who had been diving rebreather military long before that and was teaching on a lot of the different military packs. Create the Megalon, which is one of the best rebreathers in the market. We saw. I mean, there's a whole list of them, but we continue to see newer ones coming out with newer technologies. And so I think, and I don't think it's so much as rebreathers as it was, after the technical diving revolution kind of hit in the late 90s, and it died off a bit. We saw even things like nitrox. Like I see a lot of people, not nearly as many people diving or promoting nitrox as we used to see when it first came out, which is too bad. I think everybody should be diving nitrox right from the very beginning.
Yeah.
But as it, as we're kind of now entering another uh, era of technology, and it's not just in diving. I mean, look at our iPhones, our computers, our communication devices. I mean, artificial intelligence. I mean, technology. I feel like we're at the beginning of another revolution there, and so a lot of those can be married. Even things like batteries, rechargeable batteries, and dive lights. Well, all that kind of improvements can be implemented into the rebreather technology, and it can make it safer. See, one of the holdbacks with rebreathers right now is that you do need to be far more dedicated to how you set it up, how you prepare it, how you dive it. A lot of people like to just throw in a tank, jump in the water, kind of forget about their equipment, knowing that it's been serviced and it's reliable, and focus on the fishies. And on a rebreather, you never can 100% do that. You still, I mean, the number one rule in rebreather diving is know your PO2s. You got to know that that everything is working right, and if you don't, it can be very dangerous very quickly. But again, I think that the number of safety checks in there are making rebreathers far, far safer. And so I do believe in the next, it may not happen in the next decade, but I do believe that rebreathers are going to become a standard. And it may not be in the form of a rebreather. It might be something similar to that. But definitely that, I mean, especially if you're a deep diver, you can't buy helium and dive at open circuit affordably anymore. It's just way too expensive. And rebreathers just makes that different. People say I can't afford a rebreather. It's $10,000 to $15,000 to start. And I'm like, well, you know what? If you're gonna dive deep, you should be diving deep regularly. If you're gonna be diving deep regularly and you're doing it on open circuit, you're gonna pay for a rebreather in a couple of years, just on the helium costs, really. Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So, and when I started diving this year, my wife had a couple of rules before I started, before I knew I was going to be training with Hubert, and that was no cave and no cave, no wreck penetration, and no rebreather. Absolutely no rebreather. So she knocked off the first two ones. And I'm actually going to be trying for the podcast. I'm actually going to be doing a episode with Matt Manzik from Dan's Dive Shop, and we're going to do a rebreather session. So I'll see. He's pretty
Excellent.
sure I'm going to get hooked on it.
Yeah.
And so we'll see. I mean, my only concern of it is all the constant monitoring and stuff like that. That worries me because I do have ADHD. So, I'm going to have to be more cautious of that. But I definitely and intrigued in trying it. And after him giving me the prices of what helium is for a gas for a dive, I mean, I totally understand why everybody's going to rebreather who's doing anything deep, because the cost is outrageous.
Yeah. Well, and I think that what fears a lot of people, one is of course the cost of the rebreathers, but another one people say, well, you do have to be paying way more attention to how a rebreather works. But I want to put things in perspective here. Um, and you do, by the way. For a moment, I do not want to minimize how important it is that if you're going to be running a rebreather, you got to be on top of it. But here's a parallel, like, and hopefully it will put things in perspective. If you've been driving for any length of time, you've probably spent some time on a highway, and a highway probably doing 100 clicks or more.
Yep.
Think about, or if you're driving through a busy town like downtown Toronto or downtown Vancouver, think about all the things that are going on. The people around you, the other cars that are doing 110, 120 kilometers an hour beside you, either right beside you going the same direction or in the opposite direction, 5, 10 feet away. We know that inattentive driving is why we have laws about distracted driving. But you become inattentive for a moment, and you crash, or you lose control of the vehicle, or there's all sorts. And we've got a lot of distractions. We've got a dashboard in front of us that delivering all sorts of information. So the amount of data that's being inputted is ongoing. But how do we overcome that? Well, we do it through gradual introductions into how to manage that data, why that data is being presented to, prioritizing that data to make sure that we don't redline the RPMs on the vehicle, or go off target, or keep the cruise control on and decide to read a book. Like, there's all these reasons and approaches and how we manage that data. But we do it, and we do it to a point where we almost become habitual. I'm not saying that we become complacent. Some people do, unfortunately, but we don't become complacent. But anybody can drive. Like, it's not rocket science to drive a vehicle on a highway. Rebreathers are really not any different. Once you get into the science, once you've invested the time, and that's why rebreather courses are so long and so expensive. The first 4 hours of my rebreather course is spent in a 10-foot pool. And all you're doing is you're running around and you're working the controls. You're working your controllers, getting to know them really well. And what's brilliant about the equipment now is that the manufacturers have put in so many safety checks, understanding that the human factors are really, it's not rarely do rebreathers fail. Rebreathers fails because the human factor has neglected to ensure that they do not fail. And so the manufacturers have gotten to know that, and so they've put in all these extra stop checks so that there's warning bells and whistle bells and levels of conservatism. So I do want to say that rebreathers are incredibly safe if you're using them properly, and that's the key secret. And I think maybe the industry itself has kind of gotten into to a trend of being complacent. We tried to make diving courses shorter. We tried to make all the requirements to do the different things we want to do. We've shortened them. And, Michael the other day was saying, it was now, hey, I've done 10 dives and I'm a rebreather diver, a rebreather instructor. I don't know how I got this card. Well, that's not because of the rebreathers or how dangerous they are. That's just because of human factors and us with other agendas.
Yeah, no, I never even thought about that analogy of driving a car with a rebreather, because when you're driving, especially in a place like Toronto, you've got your constant feed of information. And I mean, especially the new cars now, they're firing everything at you, even text messages.
Yep. Well, and if somebody's going to come to me and say that now the car is autonomous, you just get in the car and it will drive you where you need to be. And people are actually doing that, just blows me away. And then for somebody to argue with me that maybe rebreathers are not safe, well, it's like anything, right? Rebreathers gone. These things. It's not that the machine itself or the technology that's not safe. It's the people that are handling it.
Yeah, and I mean, pretty well every single dive accident that there is where there's a fatality, usually it's a diver error. And usually, even if it's equipment, it's boiled down to that the diver didn't check something right or whatever else, correct?
Absolutely. And, and I think that we've become a society that has really sort of, this is going to sound horrible, but we've avoided accountability. Everything we do, we rely on somebody else. And when something goes wrong, if my cell phone doesn't work, I blame, what's going on with the cell phone? Do you understand the technology and what's gone into it? Even a plane, we get on a plane, and if a plane is delayed for 10, 15 minutes on a runway because they only need to check something, everybody's like, what's going on? I paid good money for this, WestJet or Air Canada or American Airlines. Why can't they get their crap together? I'm like, do you understand all the systems that are going on at the same time and that they all have to work perfectly for you to be safe to experience the miracle of flight, right?
Yep.
Like I need to sort of step back a little bit and think, wow, we were very fortunate to enjoy all of this technology, and then maybe sometimes just be a little bit patient with it and understand it better. Maybe put some investment time and understand it better. And that's why, bringing this back to maybe, adaptive diving and opportunities for people who may not be able to see the underwater, whether it's scuba diving or getting my big thing is submersibles. Now I think that's going to be the next wave.
Oh,
This
I love
technology
that.
is going to, yeah, this technology is going to enable, is going to enable more people that would not physically, uh, you know, be able to get into those kind of environments. So that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I've actually got a Dr. Neil Hammerschlag from Nova Scotia, the shark expert. He's
Mhm.
coming on. He actually wants to promote disabled divers on his boat and getting people out to do the shark experience. So I'm actually going to go out and I'm trying to get a couple of adaptive friends of mine to go out and actually do a cage dive with them this summer.
Oh, fantastic. Fantastic. And we talk about, charter boats and stuff. I mean, shore diving is one thing, but getting on and off a boat, if you've got a physical disability, with your legs, your arms, that's another capability. Well, more and more dive charters are now running elevators,
Yeah,
and
which is awesome.
they're I love them. It's fantastic.
Yeah, because I mean, I went to Jamaica recently and it was still all the like small resort boats going out, right? Now,
Yeah.
luckily where I went, the guys were awesome. I didn't have to carry my tanks out. They took all my gear out for me and stuff like that. So I didn't have to worry about doing too many face plants in the water.
That's awesome.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for watching. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. And by the way, we're also on your favorite podcast platforms now. We are on Amazon. We are on Spotify. We are on iHeartRadio. We are on Player FM and Podchaser. All of the descriptions are going to be down below. So make sure you check us out. Thanks. Have a great day. And remember, grab an adventure and live. Yeah. So tell me, when you also worked with the RCMP doing underwater recovery, correct?
Yep. So prior to the RCMP, in fact, because in the commercial endeavors, the commercial operation that I ran, a lot of it began in Ontario. Um, we would do special recovery operations. A lot of them we did out of, just to help a family out find closure. And so we kind of patented a few systems on, body search and body recovery. Um, and a lot of times those were below the operating depths of public safety divers and commercial divers. And so, we were, OPP, the Ontario Provincial Police, or the RCMP out here when I came out here, got us to do some of those recoveries. Or sometimes in unique environments, overhead environments and wrecks and caves and stuff. And after one of my 10 years teaching and working down in Cayman Islands, I came back and I found myself, with some time off, and a person approached me about, because I had been volunteering for the Coast Guard Auxiliary, said, hey, the Coast Guard's putting together a dive team, a full-time dive team of rescue specialists, your arm of the rescue specialist. And I, I thought, hey, that's kind of a neat opportunity. And it's something different than anything I've been doing before. The training, it's probably the best training I've ever got. The gentleman who was running the program at the time, his name was Tim McFarland. It was a 6-month training program, one of the hardest programs I've ever been through, but one of the most rewarding. And it talked about survival, but it talked and prepared people, well, the team that we had, on how to go into some really adverse environments. And at that time, it wasn't recovery, it was rescue. Our mandate, it was a 90-minute window, which means that when we got the bell rung and somebody said, you need, whether it's a diver or a car, and the unit was formed in Vancouver at the Sea Island base where the hovercrafts are,
Yeah.
which was, funded and supported by YVR, the airport there, because the airplanes come in and take off near a delta, which a lot of boats can't get to. So the idea was that if a plane went down in the delta, we'd be able to get the hovercraft there, and then the divers could go in and take care of it. And it also came on the heels of something called the Cap Rouge incident, which was a tug that overturned. Coast Guard showed up, and their divers couldn't get in the water because they weren't trained rescue divers. They weren't trained public safety divers. They had tanks and stuff, and they were kind of diving on the side. But there was some concerns about these divers, these Coast Guard specialists, going in underneath a vessel that was overturned in swell and current. And so the SARTEX came out, but at that point it was too late. And so the Canadian government decided we're going to have a full-time team of dedicated divers that could get into anything in the water. And so when that bell went off, we had 90 minutes because we had evidence that a person can be resuscitated after 90 minutes. Uh, Beyond 90 minutes, pretty much unlikely. It became a recovery. So after doing the Coast Guard thing again, I kind of got recruited by a friend to join the RCMP at the Marine unit, and it didn't take long before I got on the dive team. And so the mentality there really switched for me. It was not rescue anymore. It was about recovery. Everything slowed down. We didn't need to rush. The best dive, the safest dive was actually a no dive. If there was a way we could recover the evidence or the individual, if it was a body recovery, was using technology, ROVs, and if we couldn't do it that way, then we would go in ourselves. So yeah, um, amazing experience. It was good to find be able to bring closure to a lot of families in doing that, but also, and I'm sorry I'm going on here a little bit, Curtis, but
Oh no, no problem.
um, what it rolled into me because I had also gotten into a major crimes position um, with the RCMP was I sort of married the two, which was accident analysis. So I got trained through an American organization called NASBLA in marine incident accident analysis, which included a lot of diving operations. And so I had an opportunity to do a deep dive into, it sounds kind of morbid, but a deep dive, and pardon the pun, but a deep dive into causality. You know, um, what causes, and it's never one thing, right? It's usually a stream of things that happen. But what are the patterns that lead up to a diving accident or a marine incident or accident, and how could they have been avoided? Was there negligence? Um, was there error on the part of the human, i.e., human factors? A lot of times, human factors plays a big role in it, but was there circumstances outside of that we needed to recognize or identify? So that's how I kind of got into the RCMP dive team.
Wow, that's cool. When I did my instructors in BC, we were talking. I actually got a chance to train with Corporal Bob Tether back at the time for an entire week, and we did underwater body recovery and crime scene preservation and all that stuff. And it was awesome. It was a very cool week to do that and training with them. And the best thing about that was I made friends with him, and when he come to Underwater Canada, he always let me come and sit in on his seminars.
Yeah, yeah. Bob was he's and rest in peace, Bob. But he was iconic, still is iconic in the public safety diving industry. Public safety divers and law enforcement agencies all across North America still use his books. And he's got the two books, the Underwater Investigator Forensics books. Still uses them for those, your listeners who don't know, an RCMP member. And by the way, an RCMP member that, I mean, his accolades go far beyond diving. He had a lot of accomplishments. He was awarded a number of medals for risking his life in extremely adverse conditions. Not thinking about himself. He was just that kind of an individual. He was a model police officer. But yeah, he had a passion for diving and underwater forensics. And although I never got, I mean, it was before my time on the dive team. I did underwater, like yourself. I used to go to his shows at Underwater Canada and listen to his talks and some of his training seminars. But long before I was a police officer, and probably a big influence on me on looking, because I was looking at it. I was involved in scientific diving at the time. How do we recover and or capture marine animals, or scientific evidence, and how do we preserve that evidence so that it can be presented in a non-biased way and properly criticized by our peers and add to the science, right? And so his work is, still, I don't know anybody that's coming close to what he's doing or has
Which is
done.
amazing. So that brings me to another sort of disability question I have to ask, and whether you've been affected by it and whether diving helps is, do you suffer from any sort of PTSD after all of the diving
You know,
operations you've been in?
what a great question, and especially today, um, PTSD is a hot topic. And I want to be very, very careful how I approach this because I have personal feelings about it. It has been for decades I've been an unrecognized um, concern, and now it is getting some great recognition. I think sometimes it's overdiagnosed. So let me put it this way, Curtis. Like I think a lot of people uh, when you become a police officer, when you get into, I mean, before being a police officer, I was, in the Coast Guard, and so we saw a lot of bad stuff. But one of the first questions they do in the screening process is they say, we need to know a little bit about your personality. How resilient are you? Because not everybody can do this job. You're going to see things and do things that the majority of the population can't or won't do. Or if they do it, it's going to affect them adversely. And so we need to make sure that you're one of these people that aren't going to be predisposed to that. Fair enough. And fortunately, what's happened now is they say, and if you do, we're going to make sure that you have support systems like critical incident debriefing, which, in the old days, it was like, let's just go to a bar and have, down a bottle. And that was our way. And, that was okay. But I mean, you might have been introducing one evil for another.
Yeah.
So have I been affected? 100%. I've seen and done some things that, I mean, when we go and debrief with counselors, even, it affects our counselors. They say that's stuff that I don't know I needed to hear. So, yes, have I personally, again, I'm not a psychologist or a psychiatrist or a doctor. I to this day don't understand 100% exactly what classifies as PTSD, or is it, I mean, our human bodies, we are reacting normally to an abnormal situation. And so, we have different ways of coping with that for some people. Maybe the definition is that for some people, our reaction has caused other psychological or physical issues within our person because we're just trying to survive what we've seen or done, and how we do it. And I know that from the job, even people that are outside of the diving, I have a lot of colleagues who've gone through some incredibly horrific things and do suffer without a doubt PTSD. And so they do find, um, they have to find an activity or an escape where they can address that and process what's going on for them. And for me, maybe I don't think I suffer from PTSD. Yes, I've been seriously affected by a lot of the things I've done and seen, but I've learned and grown from them. And I think I'm a healthy person as a result of that. And so that's why I feel like maybe for me, PTSD uh, is not a classification that I I I accept for myself, but that I have been lucky or fortunate enough to find processes that help me get through those experiences. And diving has been a big one. And a lot of the people that I've worked with, I've dragged them on. So let's go out in the water, whether we're diving or we're going to just go out and look at some whales or some things on the ocean, or even go for one of the things I do with some of that colleagues that I've worked with is I have scooters, and we said let's go scootering with some snorkeling gear. They're not divers, but what a way for them to sort of avoid what they need to talk to. And one of our debriefing mechanisms that we used to do, one of my old bosses would go through when I was on a homicide unit. And if we had a bad incident, what we'd do is we'd go for a drive. And there's one thing about old school cops is that we don't like to show emotion to each other.
Yeah.
But when you're driving in a car and you're both looking forward, you can talk about things pretty easily because you don't have to face each other and see each other, right? And that's how we used to debrief some of the bad incidents we had. We'd just get in a PC and off we would go. Well, snorkeling and diving is kind of the same way. You can, one gentleman said, this is great because I used to cry in the shower because nobody could see. My wife couldn't see that I had tears coming down my eyes. I can cry in my diving mask. It's just because I got a leaky mask, right? That's the excuse.
Or
And it
because
was an ability. Yeah. So yes, absolutely, 100%. And I work with one of the local military dive clubs up in Comox, and a lot of them are retired or families of retired DND or active DND divers. And I've got an open standing offering. Anybody want to go out and maybe give diving a try, just as a form of therapy for a lot of things. I'm not there to say you need to talk to me or anything, but hey, it is a great escape.
Which is awesome. So do you get a lot of guys taking you up on your offer for that?
Oh, for sure. Yep. 100%. And, in varying degrees. A lot of times it's a distraction, again, for some of the other evils that we trade off for that. Drinking and substance abuse is one. It's a huge one.
Yep.
And we don't, it's not like somebody just goes out and drowns their sorrows in a bottle. It's sort of that okay, well, I have a drink and I have a couple of drinks in a hot tub, or two or three drinks and the next thing you know, it's well gummy, and then they step back and they go realize that I've got a dependency on something, or gambling, or shopping. Shopping is a huge one for people. It's a great escape for mood altering, right?
Oh yeah.
Forgetting well, yeah,
Yeah, definitely all that stuff and addictions, especially being disabled, it is easier to fall into those sort of traps, whether it be from medications that a doctor has prescribed you or alcohol from depression. Because I mean, let's face it, you have a major accident and your life is altered physically. It's not an easy thing to overcome for sure. And
no,
I mean,
100%.
that's the biggest thing I've noticed about my improvement since I started diving again is my mental health. I've literally gotten my life back, which I never would have imagined to this extent. And I mean, I struggled with depression and opioids and all that stuff for years. It was brutal. And I started diving again. And I mean, if I can ever find that adaptive lady that was on that cruise boat, man, I will be giving her the biggest hug that she
Good for you. Hey,
ever got, because even then I didn't realize how much of an impact it was going to have on my life when I came back here and started diving.
yeah, no, that's awesome. And therein lies sort of the secret to life, right? Is I remember my dad saying at a very, very young age. I lost my mother when I was like 5 or 6, and
Wow.
we had a family of I had 5 siblings, and my dad had to raise us. And one of the things my dad never let us do was feel down or out of it. He said, you know what? Here's the fact that you all have to learn and accept life is not fair. There's nobody ever said, the idea that things should be easier for us because we've had something bad happen to us. There's no rule to that. How you know drive or design your future is up to you now. And it's a mandate I've been tried to live by all my life, right? Stuff happens to we all got kind of baggage, and
Oh
how do we
yeah.
handle it is important.
Yeah, and diving is amazing for that, with the physical relief from it, the mental relief. It is the absolute best sport. I mean, I when I stopped diving, I did a lot of cool stuff. I mean, I did motocross racing, I did flagging for professional sports, I was involved in stock car racing and stuff like that.
Very cool.
I had media credentials for that kind of stuff because I was doing photography stuff. So I did a lot of cool stuff. None of it even comes close to the thrill I get from diving. And I mean, it's an adrenaline rush, but to me, it's an adrenaline rush. But then on top of it, it's a calming adrenaline rush. Like there's nothing else that describes it when you come up after a good dive.
100%, 100%. So it's there's the sort of the physiological things that are happening with our body, but there's also something else that I think that happens with all of this, and it's that we are part of a community that's very unique. When we have a passion. I mean, rarely people get into diving just because they want to be a diver, because they want to what's below the surface of the water. That first breath you take, whether it be in a pool or an ocean somewhere, is incredible. And I always used to say that this kind of maybe sound a little harsh, and I hope your listeners don't judge me for this, but I always felt that there were kind of two people that got into diving, and there's a bit of a Venn diagram here. But the first group, or a large population, are the people that got into it because they unfortunately did not have a community to belong to when they were younger. They weren't part of a school team, or they weren't part of a school club. Maybe they were sort of awkward in social circles, and suddenly the diving world uh gave them that opportunity to be with other like-minded people who just wanted to kind of be themselves and be healthy and explore, and not have to be a super athlete or have to be super cool looking or anything else. And so there's that sort of one group, and the other group of the people that are just pure explorers, that the diving is just a tool. But you got to admit, most of the explorers that I've learned are kind of part of their own unique psyche, right? And so now you marry these two, and that's the community. And I think that's why diving is much different than many of the other recreational activities that people engage in. Maybe not. I mean, I'm a bit into the biking community and stuff, but and I see similarities there. But diving provides an opportunity to engage with the community and satisfy a lot of those human needs that we have.
No, it does, and it's incredible that way, and especially for adaptive divers. I have to say that, I'm blown away by the support I have gotten from the diving community over doing this podcast for my first year. It's absolutely incredible how everybody wants to help me succeed at this and promote the message about diving and the benefits of it, especially being disabled. So
I think what you're doing is phenomenal. It's great work.
thank you. I'm really looking forward to it. And this is the first time in my life where I've actually started January out with so much cool stuff to do that it's like, okay, how am I going to get out of more work so I can
Yeah,
go and do all this stuff? So it's pretty awesome.
excellent,
So
excellent.
tell me a bit. I know that we're sort of running on time here. I don't want to monopolize your
No, it's
time
fine.
too
It's all
much,
good.
but tell me a bit about what courses and stuff you have coming up.
So a lot of my stuff is again one-on-one or private contracts. Um, uh, Let me start by saying with the things that I enjoy the most when I teach. I love teaching cave. I love teaching rebreather. I love teaching side mount because it opens up a different approach for a lot of people that are looking for redundancy and safety, self-reliance, but don't want to get into the big set of twins or can't afford rebreathers. And I enjoy those programs. So I seem to be running a lot of side mount and sort of the advanced nitrox intro trimix courses for people that are sort of exploring stuff. Um, and then a lot of the training I'm doing is professional training. So people who are becoming instructors or wanting to become instructors, um, and have that passion for technical diving. And I try to steer them away from calling it technical. I say, we're going to add one more endorsement onto your instructor qualification. And if your particular passion is, one of the things is that we find a lot of people want to do is they want to be a technical instructor. I say, don't be a technical instructor. What specifically do you enjoy in the technical realm, so to speak, that you want to teach? And is it rebreather? If you want to be a rebreather instructor, just be a rebreather instructor. Be the best rebreather and specialize in that. You cannot teach rebreather and cave. I mean, I find it very difficult. I'll go 3, 4 years where I refuse to teach a cave course because I'm not doing it enough for me to legitimately go in there and then get into. When I teach cave, I immerse myself. I go down either Mexico or I spend a lot of time here in Vancouver Island. I immerse myself in the caves, get all those sort of rusty juices out and then fresh juices in, and then I'll say, okay, now I'm time to ready to put some classes together, and it becomes an immersed environment. So things like caves and rebreather, there's now a ton of rebreather candidates around. So I kind of go in groups with them. They kind of go in spurts. I also do a lot of sort of private contracts. So public safety divers, some government affiliations, government work that I do, people that are doing special operations, that kind of stuff. So that
Cool.
keeps me really busy, really busy. Yeah.
Yeah, that would definitely keep you busy teaching all
Yeah.
those aspects of it.
Yeah.
So, do you teach a lot of caves still?
Yep. And again, as I mentioned, I'll do it in waves. So the last year and a bit, I've been focusing on the rebreather and a lot of the stuff that we're doing out here on Vancouver Island. So a lot of mixed gas stuff. And so that's sort of and plus I've had some private contracts come in that have distracted me. So that'll be my focus. Next year, we're looking at kind of coming around and spending 2 or 3 months in Acamel and setting up some good cave camps there. And so that'll be another sort of immersion. And then sort of tailing on that, we're going to be doing some more pushes up here in North Vancouver Island. And I know a lot of people who are good cavers, but they're just not ready for the kind of caves that we have on the island here. They're colder, they're seasonal, they're high flow, they're really deep, really deep. And so, to prepare them for that, we'll take them through a technical cave course. And those are the ones I really enjoy.
Cool. No,
Yeah.
that's amazing that you do all that stuff still. So, with your cave diving, what would you say is your biggest accomplishment or coolest thing you've done being a Canadian National Geographic explorer?
Uh, well, and and first of all, I should, with the caveat that what I'm going to say, I'm very proud of, but I want listeners to know that there's so many people out there doing amazing things that I'm not for a moment trying to purport that what I've done is remarkable, or I mean I think it is, but there are just so, especially today. Back when we first started doing a lot of the caving, like uh, David, I don't know if you're familiar with David Sawatsky. Um, he's actually he used to work for DCIM, and he was a hyperbaric physician, great
Yep.
cave explorer. And he came out and he knew I was a caver, but he wasn't a mixed gas diver. And at that time, I'd been teaching a lot of mixed gas, and I've been I'm doing a little bit on the North Island caves, but a lot of the survey work that he had been doing up there was bottoming it out at around 150 feet. And even though back then we had deep air was quite common. People were doing 200 plus feet on air, and it was regular. But we were really trying to push the mixed gas to say, hey, let's get rid of the. We actually had a course called Technical Deep Air, taught people to dive to 240 or 250 feet on air. Of course, we've gotten rid of those courses, but now that we know better. But um, he came out and he said, like, I want to marry your mixed gas resources and expertise and use that to push these caves that I have in northern Vancouver Island, because I can't go any deeper with them. And again, he was an incredibly accomplished caver. He's more of a sumper than he was a caver. He was a dry caver that became a diver because the caves were getting wet where he was going into. And I said, okay, fair enough. But I want you to teach me to be a real cave explorer. Like, I cave, I go to Florida all the time. But I mean, the kind of stuff that you're doing is on sort of another level. And so this is kind of going back 30 years. And he said, fair enough. And so the equipment we were using is nothing like the kind of the Gucci gear that we have today, the side mount and all that kind of stuff. And we went through a lot. I'd go through 2 dry suits in the span of 3 weeks pushing a cave system, because it was just a lot of push and shove, and you're pulling tanks through and high flow. But if you were to ask me what some of the best accomplishments were, it was to sort of take those initial pushes that the original pioneers, Dave was just one. There was a half dozen that were kind of involved in the original exploration of the North Island Vancouver caves. Um, but we did. We took them deeper. We took them close to 300 feet. We took them quite a bit ways back. And we're not. I mean, the distances weren't as significant as you see some of the people pushing a lot of the caves today, but it was just the environment. We had 2, 3 knot currents in these caves. You had logs coming through in some of these caves. The water temperatures were close to zero, if not below zero. The environment with zero visibility. And so our accomplishments at that time, we pushed one system at what we believe at the time was probably the deepest cave dive in Canada. Uh, it was one of the first mixed gas. Well, I don't know of anybody else that was doing mixed gas cave diving in Canada. So, you know, we we think it was the very first mixed gas cave dive in Canada, and I think it was the first time we connected 2 major systems on the North Vancouver Island, which assisted another gentleman who was doing a lot of. He wasn't a diver himself, but he had a passion for um, surveying and marking uh, the karst systems and how important those watersheds were to the whole ecosystem on the north end of the island, and how they were being threatened by the forestry industry and the mining industry. And he actually completed his PhD out of it. In fact, as a result of his work, they created a provincial karst day after his work. It was very, very well. So it was those contributions that I think that when it came to caving, I feel the most proud of. Today, people are crashing those records and doing amazing things. But back then, it opened the door, and we see a lot more caves in Vancouver Island and British Columbia for that matter being opened up. And I think because people were saying, hey, people are actually doing this, I think it's cool. Let's go do it.
Yeah, the technology has definitely come a long way, especially when it comes to like dive computers and stuff like that. I mean, that new Garmin one that came out, it's got a GPS on it.
Yeah, yeah, pretty amazing.
Well, I mean, especially for a caver, that I would think would be a totally invaluable tool for you guys, right?
100%. And if they can get lidar under the water, that would. I mean, I know they have devices now that help us map, and of course Jill, what they did in their projects where they had that 4, I think it was a 3 or 4 axis seismic uh, surveyor attached to the front of the Fat Boy, which was at that time it was the Mondo scooter that they used to go through the caves in Florida. She took that in. They did this incredible mapping of the Wakula project. So that was huge, and that technology exists. I have a friend who teaches in Mexico, and I mean we talk about caving accomplishment. I like to think I'm a good caver, and I've done a lot of neat things in caving. Well, when I see my friend in Mexico, Michelle Vasquez, I mean, he's a Mexican national. That's all he does. Every day he's diving. If he's not teaching in the, he's actually out exploring all the different cenotes. And they're looking at this technology. They're using it to survey these systems. I mean, when you do it 8 hours a day, every day, that's another level. And those are people that are not bragging or talking about what they're doing. They're just doing it like it's everyday work.
Which is
Incredible.
amazing. Yeah, that's amazing. Like to go out and do all that stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely amazing how diving's evolved over the last few decades between gear and everything else. I think one of the other thing that has really surprised me since I started diving this year again is how much side mount diving is taken off for not even specific technical divers. Um, I mean, I had when I started this year, I was like, okay, what else can I do to adjust my thing? And I had I don't know, I probably had about 10 instructors all say to me, dude, you need to dive side mount. It'd be so much easier for you and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And so I'm really pumped to get certified in it. And since then, I got 3 other friends that are all my age, older guys, that are all going to get side mount trained this year. So it's going to be awesome. I got 4 guys right off the bat to go and side mount dive with.
It is. It's getting really, really popular. And again, it's probably one of my most popular courses, or people that want to do training with me that they ask for that. And I enjoy teaching it because it is a lot of fun. But it opens up doors for everybody. And not only is it, first of all, it's safe. I have a personal belief that if you're diving below 50, 60 feet, I don't care how good you are, how easy the environment is, you should have a redundant gas supply. This idea that your buddy's always available is it's just a fallacy. It's a uncommon
Buddies
thing.
don't
So
stick together now.
yeah, no, they don't, and we're distracted, and nobody runs out of breath on a full breath of air. My training. Sorry, I'm going off on another tangent here, but
No,
my
go ahead.
personal training philosophy is when an instructor is responsible for teaching, it's much different than when a student is responsible for learning. So the case in point here is, when you were taking your open water course and you're a diver and you learned how to take your mask off and put it back on, right? That was one of the most, it still is for a lot of people, most intimidating skills that they have to do.
Yep.
But they do it under the watchful eye of an instructor, and the graduating demonstration of that skill is at 20 or 30 feet on an ocean bottom or a lake bottom, while the instructor's holding on to you and they've got their hand with another regulator right in front of you, and if you kind of screw up, they're there for it. So you've got that sort of cushion, and you feel that level of confidence that when I finish the skill, I feel like I can handle any kind of mask, offing skill or scenario or problem. But that's not when a mask comes off. It comes off when you're at 60, 70 feet drifting along the area. The visibility is bad. Diver gets too close to you, kicks your mask off, maybe knocks your regulator out. That's when it really happens. We as instructors can't teach a person and have them overcome that particular skill in exactly that particular environment in an open water course. Training agencies won't allow us to do it, and it's too much. What we're saying is that as an instructor, I'm telling you the realities of what can happen as a diver and where you need to be if you're going into that environment. And I can only take you so far, but you've got to gradually continue to work your way there. Under the, if you need coaching from another instructor, taking additional training, it's all there. But you've got to get yourself to that point through experience. And so the out of air scenario is exactly the same. We learn how to recover a regulator. We learn, all these different things to go to a buddy if you run out of air. But the fact of the matter is we never run out of air with a full set of lungs, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's never Murphy's Law, the diver's never going to be beside us. They're either trailing behind or they're swimming hard ahead of us. And so that's my principle, is to always have that second tank. Side mount kind of opens all of that up. It takes the weight off your back. You can drop your tanks in the water before you hop in, throw them in. Like there's so many benefits to it. You don't have to go into an overhead environment or cave. It's not just for cavers anymore. And the equipment now, it's so Gucci'd out that it's easy to dive side mount.
Yeah, no, I'm totally looking forward to doing my side mount training this year. Jill's actually supposed to be might be coming to Tomori this year. So hopefully we're going to try and make it so that I can do a side mount dive with her, which would be phenomenal. So,
fantastic.
so she can give me some critiquing on my side mount ability.
Right on. Right on. Yeah, it is great.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. I really am looking forward to doing all that kind of stuff this year. Well, first of all, I'm gonna have all your information down in all the links below here so that everybody can check out your
Fantastic.
website and stuff like that. And also, you run a lot of webinars. I attended one of your webinars the other night. Do you have more of those coming up on a regular basis?
Yeah, we just it's something I just started doing. I do a lot. One of the things I offer is what's called a one-on-one. Let's talk. And what that was for a lot of people who, first of all, they weren't sure they wanted to make the investment in technical or any other kind of dive training course, or they had a bad experience. And they said, listen, let's just do a one-on-one Zoom call. And a lot of it started during COVID when we couldn't meet, right?
Yep.
And I said, let's just meet and you can talk about maybe we can help work your way through. A lot of more people like side mount. Hey, I took a side mount course. I hated the side mount. I don't want to do side mount. I want to sell all my gear. I'm like, okay, well, let's slow down here. And so to be able to get on one-on-one on a webinar or on a Zoom call or another format was great for them. And then I started adding, hey, you know what? Why don't we get you together? I got another friend. He's an instructor. He specializes in this. Do you mind? Well, let's get the three of us online and we'll start talking about it. And so it sort of grew from there. And then a really good friend of mine, Russell Clark, who used to be diver for editor for Diver Magazine, said, you should maybe start publicizing a lot of this stuff. I used to run a regular column for 30 years through Diver Magazine called Technically Speaking, and I still do blogs on that. He said, you're still in the old ages. People like to see people on TV and on computers. And I'm like, well, I'm not. I've got a face for radio. Like I just don't. I'm not really good for that kind of stuff. But he said you got to try it. And so I started the first webcast was actually with a diving local legend here, Doug DeProy, and it was about how can we reignite the passion for nitrox. So we had actually started this club called Club Voodoo,
Yeah.
based on we're breathing voodoo gases and what were the benefits of it. And he's a diver who's been diving for 7 decades. He's into his 80s and dives more regularly than anybody I know.
Still?
And it was still diving. Yep, again dives every week and very healthy. And it was really well attended. And so we did a couple more. One with, of course, with Michael Menduno, and it was a great chat. And we've got a few more planned. I'm not sure how much I can keep it up, just because quite frankly, I'm just really super busy and I'm all over the place. But it was a lot of fun. And we got one coming up with Hamish Tweed, who ran or drove the Cloud Sponge project out in the seashells. And these cloud sponges, these glass sponges are incredibly important to our ecosystem. So for the last 20, 15 years, he's done a lot of work on it, and it's all deep diving. It's everything. So we're calling it, the talk is going to be 130-40. So what's beyond 130-40 and why is it important, to explore those depths in deep diving? Really, I mean, as Billy Dean's put it, with the introduction of mixed gas and technology, we've doubled our playground. So.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I'm actually looking forward to that. I'm going to for sure sign up for more of your webinars. It was awesome the other night having Michael Menduno on there. So I've been talking to him quite a bit lately, actually. And it's funny because we realized that we both were in Key West at the same time. And when he was doing all the aquacore stuff, and yet I always was trying to bump into him and never managed to bump into him. Right. So now it's been awesome. I've been talking to him constantly. So
He's an incredible reservoir of information.
oh yeah, he is. He's incredible. His resume for diving stuff is absolutely incredible. I mean,
yeah.
he's definitely one of the other pioneers in cave diving and stuff and deep
And,
diving.
and just such a humble and nice guy too, right? Just a pleasure to talk to.
Oh yeah, no, he's awesome. Actually, he's convinced me to go to DEMA this year to promote my podcast.
You
So
should,
and
100%.
hang out with him. I'm absolutely going to. I've already booked the time off to be able to go. I'm for sure gonna go. I can't wait to hang out with him. I know it's gonna be a blast there. So I've never been to DEMA before.
Oh, good. Okay, you'll like it. It was a good time this year. People are. It's kind of making a resurgence, I think.
Well, that's good because I mean it's too bad that we don't have a dive show in Canada anymore.
And that's a great point. I mean, Underwater Canada, I love going to the Underwater Canada shows. I think the Ontario Underwater Council did a phenomenal job on it. I mean, any dive show uh, relies, in Canada anyway, relied on volunteers, right?
Yep.
Um, the Alberta Underwater Council and, the Kathy McQuaig, John McQuaig, Tarina, the folks, I know there's a lot of folks that are involved in it. They do a phenomenal job at divescapes, and it kind of goes back and forth between Calgary and Edmonton every 2 years. And it's a good show. But we used nothing like Underwater Canada, and we need to have that again. I don't know if you know this, but back in '96, we had something called Mix '96, which it was a spin-off of the tech shows that Michael was doing down south of the border, and it was in Vancouver, and it was small, it was very successful. And then the year after that, we ran an island, what we called it, the Island Tech Retreat, which was a very informal get together from people to come in. They brought their rebreathers, and this is back in 1997. It was a long time ago,
Yep.
and it was a great forum, but a very informal forum, and it sparked enough interest that the next year or 2 years after that, we ran See the Future, the Tech 2000 Symposium. And it wasn't just about diving, it was for anybody who had an interest in exploring the underwater environment and the technology that was associated with it. And we had Phil Newton, Paul and Jill Heinrich, um, Jared Jablonski, Tom Mount. I mean, all the big hitters came up to our small little town in Nanaimo here, and we had an incredible event. And
Wow.
it again, more evidence that the community loves this kind of stuff and they really want to do it. And so, but putting together a dive show is it's a lot of work. And of course, DEMA is not for it's for the tradespeople, right? It's for
Yeah.
you have to have something to do it. So we need something in between a DEMA and a smaller provincial or municipal show, and especially here in Canada. We need to get
Oh,
the dive shops together working on it.
yeah, yeah. No, I think it would be good if they got it started back up again because they definitely need to do something like that. I remember I got to meet Phil Newton actually at the last, I think it was the last one I went to actually, which was really cool because I mean, most divers don't even get a chance to possibly talk to a lot of these guys. A little bit easier now with social media and stuff like that. But again, that was an awesome place where you get to meet and talk to all these guys.
Yeah, community building, right? I 100% support anybody who makes any effort to bring that community together, and dive shows or conferences or retreats are a big part of it.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited about that and really excited about sharing this podcast with people and promoting it and getting more people in the water diving. So,
Awesome, awesome,
well, thank you very much for your time today, Bill. It has been amazing to have you on, and I look forward to our next episode. You're going to have all of the video information and the links down in the bio, the description there for Bill's stuff. So you can contact him if you're interested in doing any training or checking out of any of his webinars. And remember, have fun, grab life by the horns, and don't let disability keep you down. And I will see you guys next time.